Welcome back to the Wrong Advice Podcast. I'm your host, John Picciuto, and I'm very, very, very excited to have my good buddy, Mr. Ashten Ricardo, on the line with us today, all the way from Toronto, Canada. What's up, Ashten?
Let's go. Let's go. I'm happy to be here. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. Can you introduce yourself to the listeners?
Okay. As John explained, my name is Ashton Ricardo. I'm currently on Twitter. My Twitter handle is powered by pain. I just changed it. I had a recent hack, so trying to avoid all that drama. I guess, I didn't really plan for this. I'm just, I guess to start off, I have a production company called Dead in 100. Essentially, what we do is, take pictures, create content. I've spent the last like 10 years or so, essentially just like honing in on my skill in photography and as an art director. And then we essentially just we run a full production studio specializing in providing like high quality services, and just like working in the industry. So commercial work, video work, digital assets for businesses and entrepreneurs. You can always check us out at deadin100.com. I love doing business, but if anything, let's just build a relationship and get to know each other, and we can go from there. Like I feel like there's everyone's an artist, but that's kind of what I do. In a lump sum. I don't know if that was good, but
Yeah, no, it was good, man. Let me ask you a question. How did you get your start? Like what, where did the love of photography and video making come from? Where did the production studio start? Like what was like your starting point?
Okay. So my grandfather, he's from Jamaica. Okay, so I guess my great grandfather had a bunch of hotels, my great grandfather married a woman who ended up killing him
Oh
in
shit.
Jamaica, and they owned a bunch of hotels. So because my great grandfather was a little fearful for his life and this like relationship, and I don't know if you know about Jamaica, it's a developing country. There's a lot of like poverty, people are hungry, and like life is not really valued. So my great grandfather gave my grandfather two options. He gave him two plane tickets, one to go to England and one to go to Toronto. I believe at the time, like Toronto was accepting a lot of like foreign or immigrants in the country, and then that's kind of like where my family started. So he brought like my grandma, and his three kids, my mom and her two brothers and my uncles, and he was a photographer. But it's kind of crazy because like Jamaica is such a small island, and everyone like to give you context, like a lot of Jamaicans are like either in Japan, England, Toronto, New York, right? So we touch on these cultures, but my family settled in Toronto, and my grandfather was a dope photographer. Like RIP, I really miss him to this day. But he was like a big influence in terms of like a father figure. Like he really did his part to like at least keep the family structure together. Like just he really just like was the backbone of my family, and he was a photographer, and I really realized like, and I guess like my influence comes from, like, he would take us up to Niagara Falls, take pictures, but he took pictures simply to document our family tree
Mm-hmm.
and these family events. So I have all these pictures from my grandma's house where like it's just like these swagged out Jamaicans in suits and all this stuff coming from church or these events and these functions. But like, and now I can ask my grandma, I'm like, who's that person? They're like, oh, that's your cousin from like blah blah blah. But it served as a way of tying us all together, even though we were like in different parts of the world. So that's kind of how I started. And I have my first picture, which was at the Toronto Zoo, and it's like of a polar bear, and like ever since then I've been so addicted, and he just supported my passion for photography. We would hang out, he would shoot, he would give me the camera, he would write on the pictures and stuff. So yeah, that's kind of where it started for me.
That's dope, man. So your very first picture you ever took was of a polar bear at the zoo?
Yeah, I have it. I'll send it to you over the DMs. I personally want to be a National Geographic photographer, and
No
then
way. No shit.
yeah, yeah, it was kind of like I loved animals. I always wanted to be a vet. Like growing up, I just connected with animals. I don't know what it was, and maybe we can dive deep. I kind of understand why, but I always had a fascination with animals, and just like animals would always come up to me, and like so I was always just curious about that, and I wanted to be a vet when I was younger.
That's cool, man. So you're a little kid, and you find out that you're in love with taking pictures and you love animals. What was like the process like, going through high school and college, graduating, and then going into the creative field, and like what made you start your studio?
Okay, I have to give you the context of like my environment for you to understand that. So okay, my mom did this thing where like we weren't well off. Like, we were I don't even want to say middle class. I can basically say like we were struggling. Like as a kid I didn't understand that, but
Mm-hmm.
she always did this thing where she would move into these like affluent neighborhoods and to ensure that like I went to the best schools because
Oh,
I
nice.
guess with my older brother went through the English school system and I went to the all French school system and she like her having her first kid I feel like she made some mistakes in terms of just like being aware. Just to give you also context, my family's like the first black family in this like that bought a house in this like neighborhood in Toronto. So
Wow.
that's a whole other
Yeah.
story. That's kind of like the context of it, and I know we don't use that, but so when I was growing up, I was always in these rich neighborhoods, but I always felt like I was different. I always felt like an outsider. So I grew up on 35 Charles Street, Charles Street is like in Yorkville. So I don't know if you listen to Drake, but like
It's a
I'm where
fancy
you can't
neighborhood, right?
shop. Yeah, it's a very fancy posh neighborhood, like really upper class. Like I'm talking about like it's a ballin' neighborhood. Um, so she did that, and then I like I just always wanted to express myself and I always wanted to connect because I later found this out later. Like I was abandoned as a kid, so I always felt outside in, and like I think it's like abandonment comes with a lot of other things. But I always wanted to connect with people, and like I went to an all French daycare because of where I lived,
Mm-hmm.
and because of that, I went through the French school system, which like at the time there was only one French elementary school where every kid technically, even outside of the city, would go.
Wow.
Um, and yeah, that's kind of how it started. So I had a few teachers that just encouraged me. And like it's a public school, but it felt like a private school because of the like how small the classroom sizes were.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's kind of what kickstarted everything. Like just the need to express myself. And I used to get in a lot of trouble. Like moving later into high school, I grew up in Witchwood in Toronto, which is also another posh neighborhood, St. Clair and Bathurst. It's like Forest Hill, which actually Drake is from. Drake is from the neighborhood called Forest Hill, and it's a very like upper class neighborhood. And again, the same sentiments happened, but in this case, my environment was a little more toxic because like it's separated. Like you have this neighborhood called Cedarville, Forest Hill, but on the other side where I kind of lived, it was like, immigrants, very
Right.
like it was poverty stricken. They call it Little Jamaica right now, and it's kind of sad because they're tearing it down and
Oh,
rebuilding this gentrification. But to give you just an idea, like if you Google Heartless G Toronto, you'll understand the environment I was in. So he's like the first rapper, and it's so sad. Like he just killed somebody in front of my mom's place
oh
just
shit.
because they were a stranger. And then he was like the first rapper in Canada to have his music video used as like to indict him for a murder charge based on it because he was on the run, dropped a music video. No one really spoke about it.
Dude, this
And
just
then
happened to those two rappers. Who was it? Gunna and what was the other guy?
Young Thug.
Young Thug. Yeah, this is the same
So
thing that's going on with them right now, right?
exactly, but this is the first case in Canada. They were like, we're
Gotcha.
using this music video because you're basically you look
Admitting
like
it.
a murderer
Yeah,
and
right.
and you drop this on the run and no one like he was on the run for like 2 months, I believe. And then
Wow.
someone was just like, you want to know where he's at? Like take a look at this music video. And it's really bad basically, but
Yeah.
just to give you context and I don't want to like glorify like any of that stuff
No,
just
for
because
sure.
like
Yeah. But it's
a
where you
part
grew
of
up.
my story, yeah, it's where I grew up, right? And a part of it was I had the two sides of it. Like I grew up in the hood, and then I would go to school with like French dukes and like all this stuff, and it was just so polarizing, right? So,
Yeah.
um,
Did you have a
and
hard time?
then
Did you have a hard time fitting in as what I would imagine was one of the few minorities in the school?
okay, so yes, I did because I was the only Jamaican that spoke French. So I was like, yes, I'm a black Canadian, but We had African kids, and we have different. It was very multicultural, and I had black teachers, I had white teachers, I had teachers
Okay.
from like Ukraine. It was very diverse, but like the African kids didn't consider me black because I wasn't from Africa,
Oh,
and then the
right.
white kids were like, "You're not really white because you're." So I
Yeah.
always had this complex where I was too white.
Dominicans are like that a lot too, right? Like,
Yes,
yeah, they're like, I'm not black, I'm Dominican kind of thing. Yeah.
for sure. So
Yeah.
we in the Caribbean we call it the caste system, and like you could see me, I'm kind of fair skinned. I have a yellow undertone, so I am favored culturally, but I don't believe in the caste system, and I think that like I was always trying to like be like, yo, we're all human, let's just get along, we're all the
Absolutely.
same. But even as a young age, so the complex I kind of developed in high school was that I was too white for the African kids and too black for the white kids,
Yeah.
but I would always go back to the hood. So it was like, what are you guys talking about? Like, we have Spanish kids, we have white kids, like,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? So I developed this complex, and like, I'm so grateful my mom made that decision. And no one in my family speaks French. I'm the only one fully bilingual. It's been a great opportunity here in Canada. If you speak French, you can basically get any job, right?
Oh,
So,
nice.
yeah. So with that being said, like, it kind of like gave me an outlook. So just imagine being in the hood, and then you're going to people's houses and you're like, whoa, this is how you live? Like your school friends, and then coming back and trying to tell people that are just still on the block. Like they can't imagine it. So the biggest, like, and I have to shout them out. Like, um, so I went to a French high school, and then there's another French private school called Lycée Français. It's a
Hmm.
more international school. And there's this family in Toronto called the Marcolinis. Shout out to Fabrice Marcolini, Raphael Marcolini, and Kemi Marcolini. They actually are living in New York right now. They're kind of the touch point for me in terms of the art world and how I approach things now. Because as a kid, I would pick her up from like her house. She lived down the street from me. I would pick her up and bring her to school,
Hmm.
and then we build a relationship with the family. But they owned an art gallery in Toronto in the Distillery District, which is like another posh neighborhood, called Art Core.
Oh,
And that
cool.
was my first touch point for like art galleries. And it was sick, man. Like I would be over for dinner. They're a beautiful Italian family, but it was the first time I saw like real art in a house. I was like to the point where like, do not touch the walls because this is an installation type of vibe.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I started, and then tying into like how I got popping off in the art stuff was like I was a very angry kid, and like I just used to like do graffiti with me and my friends, right? So we would be going out in the city and just painting it as these kids. And like I know that people don't really share their mentors, but there's a cool artist who like owned a paint store essentially called the Bomb Shelter, shout out BSF. And essentially like he just brought us in and like literally like taught us art from a graffiti standpoint. And that was like my first mentor, as well as Fabrice. So I always had these polarizing experiences, like street, high art, you know,
Yeah.
poverty, high class. And it was just very interesting. So I kind of just like I saw both sides of it, and I had to understand it for both sides of it.
That's pretty cool. Do you think that like growing up in that sort of in between place of like poverty and like affluence is what sort of drives you to be successful now? Like maybe that sense of like not knowing where you belong kind of thing?
Okay, so yeah, like it. Okay, so how I describe it, and like I always thought about this because I was like, what the fuck is a mentality? Like, how do you guys do this? And I could be wrong about this, but like how I differentiate it is like, okay, there's a poverty mindset, and then there's a wealthy mindset.
Hmm.
So the poverty mindset is money is not attainable. I never can reach it, and I used to think like that. Whereas the wealthy mindset is money comes easily and frequently.
Yeah.
So I was I was always asking questions and inquiring about stuff, and I noticed that, and it's really like I'm so fortunate because like it even goes into university. Like I would always be in the streets, and I never want to go home because I never had safe environments to like dwell in, and I knew my environment was very chaotic. That like anything could happen just because of what was going on, right? So
Hmm.
I was very hyper aware of these like my environment, and I knew that like I was at the mercy of the streets, and I always want to regain control. And like I feel like with art and graffiti, that was my way of regaining back control for myself. That's just like how I was approaching it.
That's pretty cool. How do you go from street art and graffiti to photography, videography, and working in, mixed media like that?
Okay, so my high school is very academic, right? So one day, like they kind of noticed that we were painting. We would tag the school. They knew it was us. My high school, to give you context, from grade 7 to grade 12 was like 300 kids.
Okay.
So a lot
Small.
of my teachers is super small.
Yeah.
Like my calculus class was like 7 kids.
Wow.
I would come in high, and like teachers just like, "Yo, you're in the front of the class, like you can't hide." But it was very academic. Like my school had this program called the International IB, or the Baccalaureate International. So it's like I have like a high school diploma from Ontario, and then from Switzerland.
Okay. Wow.
So my high school, they didn't really have a big arts program. So what they did was they got funding for us to, like, because they saw that we had a passion for art, graffiti, like kids from other schools would come and hang out. So they like were like, "Yo, if you guys paint these canvases, we'll set it up for auction." So I have this picture, I just found it too, of my first canvas I painted, and I sold it for $1,500 at like 16 or 17.
Oh shit.
And I was so proud, right? And like, at that time, we're just like, "Yo, we just love doing this. We'll just donate it to a cause," right?
Mm-hmm.
And we were just like, we're high off of like simply just,
Creating.
making something, someone appreciating and creating, right? And then yeah, the segue was like, because I went in these like environments, I moved to Montreal when I was 17. So because of this diploma I had, I didn't go to first year. I don't know how you guys call it in the States, but I went straight to
Freshman year.
second year.
Yeah. Okay.
Freshman. Okay. So I skipped freshman year. I already had the credits for university by doing this baccalaureate. So
Gotcha.
what ended up happening was I moved to Montreal. I went to Concordia University. And how it kind of like transpired was, I have some friends, like shout out EXO, shout out Lamar Taylor, shout out Hiley, shout out Abel. But I moved to Montreal, and I was always trying to be like, "Yo, leave the environment and come to Montreal. I have it set up at my own place. Come see what's up. Like university's cool." I have another friend, Brendan, who like wasn't gonna go to university at all, and I snuck him into our frosh. And ever since then, he was like, "I'm going to university now," right? And now like it's beautiful because we're all from the hood in different neighborhoods, but we all connected differently in high school. And like now, like everyone's so super successful. Brendan's in private equity
Wow.
from the hood. He actually did something that was cool. He bought the hood. He brought the block, and then he bought his mom's like house that like they grew up in, or like whatever the situation was, and then he has a bunch of properties, which I'm like super fond of that. I think it's so cool, right?
Yeah.
A lot of us
to give
rented
back. That's
growing
cool.
up. Yeah, exactly. So there was that. I was always like, like I said, I was abandoned. So it's kind of like I always wanted friends, and like
When
I
you say
always
you were
like felt like I
abandoned, do you
want.
mean by your parents or just your dad? Well,
Yeah, so I found this out 2 years ago. My grandma, me and her had a conversation. She's like, "You didn't know you were abandoned? Like all this stuff. Like you never really like your parents weren't really taking care of you. Like you always had babysitters, and it really like as a kid, I didn't know this, but she's like, you really took it hard, right? So,
wow.
being accepted always messed me up, and like it falls into like love and being an artist and like me shouting out the world that I just want to be accepted, and that's no longer the case now. I kind of like I really don't care about the acceptance. Not saying I don't care, but I take it. The value points are different.
Yeah.
You feel me?
Yeah. No, I do.
I don't like, I rather be, I want it to be unconditional,
Yeah.
right?
No, I think that's probably why we became such fast friends in the space. Because geez, I'm not going to say real recognizes real, am I? But yeah, like you're like a real person, right? You know what I mean? Like you have genuine hopes for everyone in the space to be successful, and like people pick up on that, right? Like, so it's
Yeah,
like
for
that
sure.
selfless sort of mentality that is probably serving you well in your career now.
Yeah, for sure. And like, to be honest, like, I just had really supportive friends. Like, like I had friends that just like, like the EXO team, like they were really supportive from day one. Like it would be like, "Yo, you're in town, come hang out with us. Like we have this girl spot, you can sleep on the floor." And like, I just like I said, I never want to go home, right? The environment was so chaotic, but
Yeah.
they just like really adopted me, and really like, I always had a sense of community, right? And they always supported me. Like that was just like the end all. Like, so
Yeah.
that's what I try to do back, because to give you another like pointer, like Toronto reminded me of like my mom. It was like the cruel mom, So she loves it. She loves you so much when you're gone, but hates it when you're home.
Yeah.
And that kind of like it just played into and triggered me in many ways. And essentially like, that's why I went to Montreal. And then that's why I went to LA. That's why I went to New York. And then I just picked up on these like patterns. So, just like supporting your friends goes a long way. And I'm a firm believer of that. Like, and I just think supporting strangers tells a lot about you, Like I'm the guy that like I do ask like the waiter how their day is. Like I don't like if I go to a corner store or you guys call it bodega.
Yeah.
If I go into a bodega to order ketchup chips or something, I'm always
Ketchup
like, hey, how's your
chips.
day going?
This guy with the
Right? That's a
fucking
plug.
ketchup chips.
That's a plug, bro. That's a plug. Shout out Doritos ketchup chips. Shout out Cheetos ketchup chips. But yeah, like it's just like, I think like we all feel the same way. Like I've always been a rebel and outcast and I just want like I just like it was like where was the love, Like where's this unconditional love that like, everyone always like wanted something from me, I felt like, and I was
Yeah.
probably jaded and callous and it took me a long time to kind of let that go.
I appreciate that. I think as like someone who I now consider a friend, it's kind of
Oh,
cool
you're the homie.
to understand like sort of where you came from and like some of the shit that you've accomplished. So you've done some fucking amazing shit. I mean, it goes without saying that you're an
Thank
incredibly
you.
talented photographer.
Thank you.
When you look at sort of like where you came from, where you're at, and where you're going, what is like something like one thing or two things that you're most proud of that you've accomplished?
Okay, so like that's a hard question. Like what I'm most proud of was like I went lateral for a very long time, and all those skills were transferable. So,
Hmm.
like, for example, I did graffiti, so I'd go paint. I wouldn't paint and carry a digital camera. I would go and paint and shoot on film because there was a barrier to that. Like, if I got caught, like the cops wouldn't be able to just like look at the pictures and say, you did it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like where my passion for photography rekindled, right? And it was like a whole new world, right? Um, and I guess like what I'm most proud of is like, yo, I went lateral and then I turned it vertical, and all these skills were transferable for me. Like, like I didn't study art in school. I actually got in for biomed at
Wow.
Concordia. And then I was like, what the hell am I doing in a lab looking at fishes? Like, I can't relate to this.
Yeah.
Where, like, where are the people at? So I switched out. I did psychology. I plugged in business. And then that just rolled out with marketing. So it's like I have a degree in organizational psych. So what ends up happening is like it's kind of like HR, but on the department and organizational level. So like, how do you make teams work?
Hmm.
How do you have workflow that is like you streamline stuff and increase production capacity? And I kind of approached that same skill to art because I was always like, I wanted to have ownership. I want my art to be sustainable, and that inherently keeps me accountable for my art.
Yeah, I like that. I think of you as a person who's not, listen, I don't want to talk about not being money motivated, right? But like there is a lot of people in the NFT and Web3 space who are solely motivated by getting the bag, right? I don't
Yeah,
necessarily look at you like that. Like I think you're very thoughtful and intentional about the work that you put out and how you're
for sure.
creating your name in the space. But talk to me about motivations in life in general and like in your career, like what motivates you to be successful and like what gives you the drive to like kind of keep going.
So like, okay, it's like I always ask myself this, like, and I ask everybody this. It's like, what's the reason why you wake up in the morning and why you go to bed? So like, I was someone that like, it feels weird saying it, but like I never felt accepted, right? And I realized I had to like accept myself. I had to love
Oh,
myself,
yeah.
and I had to love what I do. But like my camera has allowed, and my art in general has allowed me to see like a lot of the world, and I really believe that it will allow me to see the world, right? In terms of like the space, like look, like we all have bills to pay, but you're Italian, right? Do you
Mm-hmm.
speak Italian?
See, un po'.
Okay, do you know what the word opera means in Latin or Italian?
Well, I don't know what it means in Latin, but
Okay, so do you know what it means in Italian?
it's like tragedy or something like that.
It's high art.
All right, right, yeah.
So I don't do stuff like money's not going to motivate me for art. Like I'm someone that like I have to say no on the first try because I will say yes. And no one, like, I don't really, like, yes, I need to get my bills paid. I want to make a sustainable living. I want my art to sustain me and others, but like, it's not going to make me move. Like, my favorite quote is from that Fire Fest. It's like, I'm not going to suck dick for water just to be able to get like what I need to get and make money. Like
Yeah.
that's just never been me because, I grew up without money and like, if I go back to being broke, like I know I can figure it out again. So, and I feel like there's a quote in this space. It's like, I came for the money, but I stayed for the community, right? But it's like, what are you really doing for the community? Like, like I went, swallowed my ego, and I wanted to make it sustainable because I really believe in it. So I lowered my price. I wanted to have an entry barrier point because that's sustainable for anyone to buy into me. It's not about the money. It's about, hey, like if you fuck with me, you want to collect this, like cool. Like there's a secondary market that no one talks about.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm really intrigued about. So I view it like we have to look at money. Money's just energy, right? Like money is the access token to do whatever you want, but it's just energy, right? Like, and like I said, money, like my mind state now is that money comes easily and frequently. So I'm not worried about money. Like, I'm a type of person that, I've learned a few lessons in my life regarding being fiscally responsible. And like, you'll learn a lot by making 50K, but you'll learn a lot more by losing 50K.
For sure.
So,
100%.
So this is where like we're tying into like the community of Web3 and this NFT stuff was like, and we've talked about this, is like I think that the quantity of sales and selling and showing the community that people are collecting is that you can't pay for that marketing.
Yeah.
And like I get it. People are in very like the times we're in, and I show compassion for it. Is like, people are hungry. We don't know half of the situations, like the live-in circumstances people are living in. We don't know what's going on behind the voice of the phone in the space, right? So I have compassion with it. Do whatever you want. Like I can never tell anybody what to do, but where I'm at is, like a lot of my friends are dope artists, and they really support me, regardless if it's a tweet or buying my work. But like, I don't want it to be a burden collecting my art on you financially. And like we're talking about the space last night, I'm like, don't buy my art. And then boom, the guy placed a bid. And I feel like I want my art to be very accessible, and I want to be an accessible artist to be collected.
That's
and
cool.
I feel like in the long run, that's gonna pay it off. So like, remember, like CryptoPunks and Bored Apes, they were probably like $7 to $20 now with inflation when they first minted.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to be like a branded photographer in the NFT space where like you bought him at $20, $100 early, but now his work is worth whatever X, So I'm about the tokenomics of it. Like I'm not like yesterday's price is not today's price, but like buy in early and you'll be rewarded, because I don't see myself quitting. I've had pictures on my hard drive sitting there not doing anything but collecting dust. What is it for me to let it go on the blockchain right now immediately for like whatever it is, and then like we'll figure it out later. And I have the benefit, and why I like Web3 and like the NFT space is because for myself, like I can pay my past collaborators in the future, but that also works for me as an artist. Like a collector buys my piece today low, but then if he flips that, I get a royalty. And I feel like everyone in this space is focused on the first sale, but not really putting value onto the royalty aspect. And we've never seen this in art history, right? Like Van Gogh sold paintings, he didn't get a royalty.
No, for sure.
So that's just like how I'm looking at it, and that's why I kind of like think this is like a revolutionary like tool. It doesn't take away from me as an artist, right? Like
I agree.
I deal with big budgets.
We've talked about this a lot. I think like it's an interesting time because it's such an early time in the space, and I think the long-term vitality of it is very good. And if that means that you're selling stuff on the low now, that doesn't mean that that's going to prevent you from selling high later, right? It's just super
That's exactly
early.
It.
You've had a creative career for a while now, like I don't want to call it 10 years, but however long you've been, a photographer and a creator. I've only been in this space for about 2 years now. Full-time come August will be 2 years as a full-time photographer. When I look at your work, it is very creative, very unique. there are stories in your images, right? And I think that's
For
something that I
sure.
struggle with as a photographer, is like creating my own story when it comes to my photographs. What inspires you to create art? And then tell me about your process of making stories with your photos.
Okay, so that's a cool question, and I really appreciate that because, like, to be honest, like, I've never shared this. So, like, okay, so like, I have a diverse portfolio of work, right? And they like, okay, I had this struggle growing up. Was like, I never wanted to be. I'm a Black Canadian, but I never wanted to be recognized as a Black graffiti artist.
Mm-hmm.
I played the violin. I don't want to be a Black violinist.
Mm-hmm.
I played the piano. I didn't want to be a Black pianist. So I didn't want to be a Black artist. I feel like that's. I want to just be an artist. You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So my pictures never fit neatly into one category, right? Like I did fashion work, I did lifestyle, I do some provocative stuff too, but what like I learned and these transferable skills was like I approach it like I do graffiti. So like I feel like there's a couple pillars in photography and I won't get technical, but I always try to like clean up reality because I was always imagining and I have a big imagine I daydream a lot, right? So I was always imagining like a better circumstance and I would always see people differently. So for my portrait work was like I noticed one key trait that like no one's ever seen themselves. They've only seen a picture of themselves and a reflection of themselves. So I would look at them and we would talk about their stories and I would like just imagine these things that like I wanted to create. But it was like I just want to be a part of someone's life and like connect with them and understand them and show like it's compassion is just understanding. So like I bring a lot of compassion to my work as well as nostalgia. And I had a lot of influences growing up. So what I do in my approach is like, I gotta first understand you as a human, like, because like it's weird. In French, a model's called mannequin. Like you're just a mannequin. And I was like, yo, man, like you're human. You're very dimensional,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like what makes you wake up in the morning and or go to bed? What motivates you? So I would have these conversations, and a lot of these people are my friends and great friends, and like through these different struggles, and like, a lot of them were like I had a trauma with my mom, so like I had a weird dynamic with women, and I was always trying to understand this relationship that like I want to have with like us, like my friends, my family and loved ones. So that's basically what I'm exploring in a lot of this stuff because like I've been through a lot of stuff and I've been betrayed by myself and family, friends, and loved ones. So I was just trying to like not to be a calloused human being
Mm-hmm.
and jaded. So I was trying to like open up my mind and just kind of like see the silver lining and stuff. So with my photography is like I just like people watching and I just like I try to understand them and I think there's good in everybody and that might be naive, but I just try to like look at them for who they are, not their struggles and like what's going on right now,
Yeah.
and then I take that in the picture.
How do you, I was gonna say, how do you take that trauma and like the shit that you dealt with as a kid and funnel that into your work?
So like it's deep, man. Like I had to sit on this shit for a long time, right? Like there's been periods of time where like, I've had to just sit in a room by myself and just like I have to figure this out
Mm-hmm.
because like I don't like where life is going and I have to understand myself. And then I realized I have to like be a little easy on myself. Like I didn't have it easy, but like I've done so much and it's like weird because like a lot of my friends I grew up with didn't know I was broke and living in poverty. Like, like they didn't know.
Right,
Like
because
a
they
lot of
see
them
you
were
in
like,
the same place as them and they assume that it's the
yeah,
same.
exactly. So like there's a university called McGill. So all my friends went to like this affluent university. Like they're all like business owners and CEOs and I'm just like I'm an artist and they're like you're the coolest guy. I wish I was doing what you're doing. I'm like, nah, man, I wish I was doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like you own businesses and shit. So but like no one ever sees themselves for what they are and we're not really kind to ourselves. So I sat with myself for a bit and I had to like, there's a few incidences that happened that like there might be a higher power out there that's like watching out for me. So, and then I just like, I have to like really just analyze these things that like hurt me and traumatize me. And, I feel like to understand a human, you have to visit their hell. You feel me?
Mm-hmm.
And I was someone that like I didn't do the work early on in my 20s, and I was always running away from my hell, and it kept catching up with me. So I like, what's that quote about being crazy? It's like approaching the same solution to a
The
problem,
definition of crazy is
expecting,
doing the same thing over
yeah,
and over again and expecting a different outcome. Yeah.
there you go. Yeah, so I was like kept in this loop, bro, and then like I was just like, all right, this is cool because now I've had the skills, and I know how these things can go. And I have the like, hey, I have these lessons that I learned, these L's, lessons, but these lessons like really helped me navigate on how I want to approach stuff now. So I can recognize these patterns and be like, oh shit, I know where this is going.
Yeah.
So let me just either like fix up or, because it's gonna get crazy. So yeah, that's
When you are like pitching yourself for a project or a job or a collaboration, like do you ever have questions about your skill set? Do you ever have doubts about your ability to deliver? Like do you ever have anything inside of you that's telling you you're not good enough?
Yeah, so I had crippling, what's the word again? It's like
Imposter syndrome?
imposter syndrome. But this is where like, yo, like find a community that supports you because my friends were very supportive. And I'm talking about like, my friend Carl and Skylar, they're like CEOs of a crazy marketing company, here, but they were always like, you're the dopest photographer. Even with my imposter syndrome, they helped me push through that. And like I remember the day that it really cracked for me was like I have to own it. And they
Mm-hmm.
gave me a blank check buying a print. Now, we all know the price for prints, bro. It costs like $7 to manufacture a print, but they gave me the opportunity. Like this is why it's funny, right? It's just art. It's like I'm laundering money, but basically $7 print, scaling that to a blank check. I write my own number, and I wrote boldly 1500 because it reminded me of that time when I was in high school and I sold this painting for 1500. So I just like that number for some reason, but and then I just had to own it. Like no one can tell you that you're good and it's gonna make you believe it. It's kind of like that movie Inception. It's like, it's kind of like you have to own it, So I
I
feel
believe
like that's
that.
what happened.
I have irrational confidence in myself and my ability to be successful. Like I think like it is just a foregone conclusion, right? Like I might not be in the position of success that I want to be today, but there's very little doubt in my mind that whether it's a week from now, a month from now, a year from now, 10 years from now, I will be in the version of my success that I
Oh, for
see for
sure.
myself. And it's just funny. It's not funny to me, but it is interesting to me that like you have incredible art, right? So like the thought that you might feel like you're not confident in your abilities or you feel like an imposter in any way is crazy, right? Because like to a lot of photographers, your work is aspirational. It's fucking dope work. So it's like if
Well,
you
thank you.
if you feel that way, it's like it's understandable how that could be like a replicatable feeling across any creative in any sort of
Yeah.
space.
And that's why I kind of like talking to other creatives because like your work's phenomenal. Like we
Thank you.
have similar experiences, even though like we're on like a different part of the world, right?
Yeah.
But this is like there's a common thread in this, and that's because like as artists, I feel like we're documenting our times, right?
Hmm.
And with that, like we don't communicate. We This is the first time like artists have been able to like kind of communicate on a global scale. Like we've globalized communication for artists. Like before we had the Freemasons, right? Which was like we're a cool club. Like we're like Masons, architects, like poets, writers, and all that stuff. So we it was never like that was kind of gatekeep. It's like this gatekeeping society, and then we've opened it up. And I think that's like kind of like what the issue is like even as humans, like we don't talk about what's really going on between us, and then
100%.
we expect our friends to just know what's going on, you
100%.
know.
Yeah, I
So
think
like I
that is crucially important. It's something that I talk about a lot on the podcast because for some reason or another, like people don't feel comfortable like going to their friends or family and saying like, "Hey, I'm struggling with this, that, or another." Like it's the perceived burden of whatever I'm dealing with, and it's like a very, very unfortunate reality of life that people don't feel like it's okay to go to their friend
yeah
and say, "Hey, I'm dealing with this." it's really sad. And I think if we can like really destigmatize like going to the people who care about you most and being like, hey, I need something, I need help, I need whatever, like for whatever it might be. It's like, bro, I might need someone to go to the movies with, like whatever it is. Like it could be
Yeah.
nothing, let alone it could be big shit. It would go a long way to like furthering the or slowing the descent of society.
Yeah, no, right, for sure. And like I remember like, man, like shout out my friend Carl, right? Like we went out one night when like, I was very frustrated because it was like, bro, like you don't know what I'm going through.
Hmm.
And I literally broke down this bar and was just like, this is what it is, bro. Like I didn't grow up like you guys. And he's from the same neighborhood as me, right? But like I would have went to his school, but if I'd gone to that school, I would have lived a different life, put it
Yeah.
that way.
Hmm.
Like we wouldn't have been friends, basically.
Sure.
But the one time like I finally understood and it clicked and I felt bad because I was just like, bro, like I didn't grow up like you. Like you went to McGill, da da da. But like I then realized I'm like, yo, I don't talk about this. I was gatekeeping myself from the world.
Yeah.
And that's something that like I stopped doing, bro. It's like as an artist, as a human, I stopped gatekeeping myself from the world because I lived my whole life putting on a mask, lying to myself, lying to everybody, thinking that everything was good, and I just like navigated,
Yeah.
you know?
I mean, I think to some extent that is what everybody does, right? We put a face on our social media, on our Instagram, on
Yeah,
our Facebook, on our Twitter, and we put on this perceived my life is perfect and everything's fine. And when in reality, things could be chaotically falling apart. I mean, I was very guilty of this. When I lost my job in the middle of the pandemic, I played it
shit.
off like the greatest thing that ever happened to me. Meanwhile, I was like an anxious, depressed mess. I was like, I had no sense of self. Like I felt like everything in my life was chaotically falling apart. And then to some degree that that fakeness, right? That perceived everything's fine and I'm telling everyone I'm good is what sort of motivated me to like now create a life where I'm like very unabashedly open about the things that I'm thinking and feeling. And I think if you can get to a point where you can be honest with yourself, let alone the people in your life, if you could just be honest with yourself and be like, this is where I'm at and this is what I need to be doing, you could be successful and do whatever the fuck you want in the world in this life for
I
sure.
agree, man. I agree. And like, I think we all can relate to this. Is like, I was fucked up and no one noticed. And I
Yeah.
was angry because no one noticed, right? So then, like, I was like, I was, man, like, yeah, I was just like super messed up and no one noticed. And I kind of think that like I was getting more and more on the edge and going deeper in the hole
Hmm.
because I wanted someone to notice.
Yeah.
It kind of sounds messed up, right?
Dude,
And then
I
like,
completely agree.
you know what I'm saying? And it became to a point where I was like, yo, like no one's coming to save you. You're in a hole. Stop picking up the shovel. Like, I don't know if I should say this, but like, it just took me one night to playing Russian roulette with a pistol and it jammed.
Wow.
And it was like, that would have been the one, right? So I was just like, fuck this shit. Like, I'm just not in a good place. I have to do this for myself and I had to figure it out for myself because no one was coming to save me. But then in turn, I knew that I wanted to become the person that would have saved myself. And that's like how my approach is. It's like I'm not a superhero, bro, like, but I just know like what I needed as a person growing up and like even like in my adulthood. So I just try to like understand and lead with compassion.
Wow, man. I mean, that's heavy.
Doesn't have to be though, but it's just a
I mean,
conversation, you know?
yeah, no, it is.
You know what I'm saying?
No, I know, I appreciate it. I mean, listen, vulnerability and honesty it goes a long way to like helping people grow. And I think, I've never had those sort of thoughts of like ending it all. Like I think I'm lucky in that regard. I feel like everyone at one time or another has thought about like the fact that life would be a lot easier if it wasn't lived. And it's a toxic mindset. It is a tragic mindset. I
Super
mean,
toxic.
yeah, it's one of those things where, again, if we could get to a point as a society where it's okay to ask for help, it's okay to talk to your friends about the things that you're thinking and feeling, like a lot of these things could get better, right? And we're not there
For
yet,
sure.
but as, mental health issues get continually less destigmatized, or more destigmatized, it is going to be a benefit for all. As like your career has sort of progressed, you've done some pretty fucking cool shit. I mean, music videos, amazing shoots, awesome clients, great collaborators. Do you have like a dream project for yourself moving forward? Is there something that you have in the back of your mind as like a huge goal for you in your career?
Yeah, like okay, so like this is a cool topic. I've never like shared this, but like I'm a dreamer, man. Like I really believe I want to change the world through my art. And like I think like my solution to that is making it very accessible.
Hmm.
Um I think I'll get there. I no, I'm gonna say this. I know I'll get there. It's just gonna be a matter of time. So like on this same topic and to sew it in is taking yourself out of a dark place, that's beautiful,
Hmm.
but taking someone else out of a dark place is art. So
I
I
agree.
feel like I want to kind of bring back and go back to my roots. I want to go back to Jamaica. I want to go back to all these developing countries and just kind of you know, bring a different aspect that really gives back to the community. So like I said, my three pillars for any business or like shit like for yourself is like being sustainable, having ownership of stuff, and like it holds you accountable. So like I eventually I dealt like with not having a safe environment. Like I want to create safe spaces that like people can just go to. Like it doesn't mean like no questions asked whatever you're going through, and there's like resources available to like a private unique resource center that tailors to you, you
Yeah,
know?
that's
And then
cool.
we can just yeah, that's what I'm really on. It's like, I think it takes a community to raise a kid.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of kids out there that just don't know what's going on. They don't know how to express themselves. And I was one of those kids. Like I was in these environments and I didn't know what was going on. Like no one talked to me about it and just told me what was going on. I had to make my own conclusion, but there were no resources, right?
Yeah.
So I just
I
want to be like,
I was just I like in this Web3 space, it's very easy to see people who are disingenuous in their community building, right? It's all for
yeah,
engagement farming and like the desire to grow themselves.
yeah,
But when it comes to you and the way that I see you creating a community around yourself and your work, it's more about including everyone in your journey. And I look at it like that way for myself as well. Like
yeah,
my
for sure. No, you're
successes,
doing it.
yeah, my successes will be because of the people that I surround myself and I bring with me versus the fact that I'm like John's going to be the number one fucking, it's like that's not how I
Yeah,
live, right? Like I think when you go through like the last 2 years in a pandemic, like what's important is like your family, your friends, the people around you, and that like everyone's
yeah.
good, right? And I think when I look at like what you're doing in the space and like how you're sort of like creating this community around yourself, it's very aspirational for me and for others.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You're doing the same thing. Like it's my first podcast, and like
Oh,
I feel
nice.
like we're all human. So like it's just getting to know people and like again, like my grandfather would always have these quotes. So I'll drop a few of them. The one that like ties into this conversation is like, okay, show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So like I'm like, yo, like I don't want to be the only like successful friend. Like I want my all my friends to be in positions. Like I'm not successful until I can put my friends, family, and loved ones in positions to better themselves
Mm-hmm.
and then other people. So like that's one of them, right? And then I guess the other thing is like I'm gonna be working on this like coffee table book. And that's just for like more vanity and like, the art side of things. I just want to create stuff that I'm passionate about. But if you ever want to keep a secret, put it in a book, right? And then the opposite is true. Is like if you want to get a secret, read a book,
Yeah,
So there's that's just kind of like what plays into this, and like
I love that.
I think I love building communities. It's something that like I've always done organically, but I just wasn't aware of it. Like I had a graffiti crew growing up, and we would chill with other graffiti crews and tap into different cities, and and then it's just like we as humans we kind of like go to common spaces and places that like we know that we can have a different perspective, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
there's book clubs, there's chess clubs, like I kind of want to like have like the art club similar to like a chess club where like we
That's
play
cool.
and we like grow together and like like wait, do you play chess?
I do, yeah.
All right, we'll have to get some games in.
All right. That's cool. I'm down. One of my biggest struggles that I've had since moving into a creative career is how I like measure what my success is, right? Like so for so much of my 20s and I guess to some extent my early 30s, like I could very linearly measure success as how much money I was making, right? So like
Okay.
in my mind, the more money I made, the more success I had. Now, for all of that time period, I never stopped to ask myself if that was correct or if that was what was correct for me. And now, since I've sort of moved into this creative career, it's not necessarily about like, listen, I need to pay my bills, take bills and like breaking even aside. Like, what I need to be a success is opportunities. It's not monetary, right? So like, I want to go on tour with a band. I want to travel the world with my camera. Like, those are how I would measure success. But for a while, I was like, really the way I measured my success in my creative career started out sort of toxic in that it was like how much money I'm making. How for you do you measure success in your career?
Okay, so like I have this company called Dead in 100, right? So it's all about like legacy. So like I kind of like I got my start in like the music business, and like there's always this thing, it's like who owns your masters and like who owns your body of work. And a lot of musicians, like they don't own their masters. They probably don't even really realize like the business that they're operating in. So I always want to have ownership of my own work, which is
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of my personal work, a lot of my work, I take value in that, knowing that I own it. Like I own the negatives, and then that will live for 200 years. Like, it won't dissolve. But like how, like success is a weird, like, how do you measure success? Like,
So
that's
for
a good question.
me,
Like, how
yeah. So for
is it just
me,
money?
no, it's not money anymore, and it used to be. It was strictly money.
Mhm.
The way I measure success now is like, do I wake up every morning happy? If the answer is yes,
There you go.
I'm successful. And I think for a long time in my life, no matter how much money I was making, I wasn't waking up happy. And my life like exhibited that, right? Like I was doing a lot of
Yeah, for
things
sure.
and like trying to fill my life up with stuff and experiences that like weren't for me, right? Bottle
Yeah,
service at clubs, like going to Vegas fucking 4 times a year, like just doing degenerate shit that I was like never asked
yeah,
myself like, yo, where is John in these experiences, right? Like where's
yeah,
John in more shoes, more clothes, more watches? Like I never asked those questions, and I think for a long time, like in your 20s, it's okay not to ask those questions, right? But you get to a point when you hit 30 where the things in life that matter start to becoming a lot more crystal clear, right? You've lost friends,
for
you've
sure.
lost family, and you start getting that sort of tragic imprint in life. And for me, when that started to happen, I started reframing the way that I looked at like what my life is and what I wanted it to be. So for me, success is I am able to live a life in that affords me the opportunity to wake up every morning and I'm happy, right? And if that ever stops being the case, I'll know it's time to make a change, right? Like if I woke up tomorrow
For
morning and I
sure.
was like, man, I'm not feeling this. Like, this is not me, right? Like, that would give me a very clear indication that it's time to do something else, right? And I'm lucky in
For
that,
sure.
like, when I pick up my camera, there's nothing that feels better in my life. There's no question. Like, if I'm shooting digitally, I take a picture, I look at the back LCD, and I fucking geek out on that shit. I get happy, I get giddy. Like, when I know I've got the shot, like, you could see it on my face. I'm fucking smiling ear to ear. I'm probably doing a little
Yeah,
dance, a
for
little
sure.
jig, you know what I mean? So, like, for me, that's how I measure success. Am I happy? So yeah.
I agree with that. So like me too. Like I'll add in like, am I being present, right? Like, am I present for the moment? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's that's kind of how I measure success to some degree, because like I can have all the money of the world, but like I understand that like it's just gonna minimize my unhappiness, you know?
100%.
It doesn't make you happy. So like I consider you successful. I consider myself successful. Now, like, do I have everything I want? No, but
Yeah, listen,
like what's success?
yeah, there are like tangible things that I want, right? Like, so whether it is to own my own home, probably not. Whether it is to have like my own creative space, like my own studio, right? Like I
Yeah,
need a certain level of financial freedom to have another rent payment, right? So like I'm not there yet. But like when I have my own photo studio space, I'll know I'm fucking successful, right? So like there are levels to this game, obviously, and it is to some unfortunate degree obviously tied to monetary stuff. But
yeah,
what that monetary aspect of it to me is not necessarily affording myself the opportunity to buy more shit, right? It's not
for
about
sure.
having fucking XYZ. It's about how can I make more money to reinvest into myself as a person to enjoy experiences more, right? So like I just spent so much time and money in the dumbest, most useless possible
For sure.
ways, that like I'm not regretful for it, right? I think they were very, very valuable lessons. You learn a lot about yourself when you blow money on dumb shit, right? So at the end of the day, like I'm extremely thankful for those learning experiences. It's just not where I'm at now.
I agree. So like why you probably feel that way is because new levels, new devils, right?
Yeah.
So like okay, so this is why I asked you what you define success as, because like for me is like I'll be successful. I'm successful now, but I'll be successful by my definition when like I can put a random kid in a position to be successful himself. When I can just like hire my mom to do bullshit tasks,
Yeah.
and there's a budget allowed for her just to be able to fuck off and do whatever the hell she wants. And this came from like, one of my friends, Johnny Giosaurus, he passed away, right? And like he was a fashion designer here in Toronto. He did New York Fashion Week, his first one, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day he died after doing his first show.
Wow.
I'll preface that with he was epileptic.
Okay.
He had an epileptic seizure, and then he passed away that very next day after a successful night. Okay. Wow. But when he was my roommate in university, when we lived together, we had a dog together, we had all these experiences. He always knew that day was coming, you know? So he was just like, none of this shit matters. Like none of this, I can't take this with me when I'm dying, because he had to like, reconcile with the fact that like he has like an issue, a medical issue, and that day's gonna come, and he prepared us. He prepared us for it.
Our own mortality is, if it's not the greatest motivator in your life, you are living a life in a comfortable level that I would say a vast majority of human beings can't relate to, right? Like if you come from generational wealth, your own mortality is never on the topic of your head. But like for me, I don't come from generational wealth, and I'm a person who works for a living, and my own mortality is extremely present ever in my mind. And it's not that I'm like morbid, but I think about all that I want to accomplish in my life, and that list is extremely long. And if I died tomorrow, I wouldn't be mad like I didn't accomplish things. I would just be disappointed that I hadn't reached all of my goals. And that's life, right? If you don't have that, you're never going to be successful, right? If you don't have that drive, that tenacity to like want to leave an imprint on this world when you're gone, it's going to be very difficult for you to have any sort of success in life.
I agree with you, but always add perspective, because like, perception is reality. So like when I went to Johnny's funeral, right? It was man, I don't cry, but that funeral made me break down.
Yeah.
Right? Like it was an Orthodox Greek funeral. They're very like, whoa. It's like very down. So his dad grabbed me and looked at me in the face, and I've like, seen a grown man, like a strong grown man, cry after losing a son. Like that will break anybody. But he grabbed me and he said something that I will never forget to this day. I got to thank him one day, because it spiraled my whole life into this thing, right? So he said, just remember that you have other people's dreams on your shoulder.
Yeah, wow.
And that's what like really was just like, it really hit home for me, because I was just like, I can't be selfish with the way I'm living.
Yeah.
Because I have other people's dreams on my shoulders. There are people out there that had to like, bend their will and like settle. And I'm super grateful for the opportunities I have, but like at what cost, right? There's a lot of people that supported me in that journey. Like, and I'm not talking about supporting like cheer you on, bro. Like a lot of people have like really put their best foot forward into like helping me develop as a human and showing me a different perspective and have invested in me. So that's like kind of like what goes down. So like in terms of success, I think that if you look at it in that perspective, like everyone's successful.
Yeah. I look at like, I think ultimately the number one way in which I'll be able to measure success will likely be something that I won't be able to do, right? It'll be like at my funeral, right? If there's a fucking lot of people there and they're all super sad that I'm not here anymore, like that's a pretty good way to measure success, right? Like
but you won't see it.
No, I know, but like,
you won't be able to see it.
I might be like floating up top. Like I might be, I might be looking down or something, you know what I'm saying? But like in all seriousness, like I think success in
I hear
life
you.
can be measured in a myriad of ways, and it could be financial, and it could be career, and it could be being a dad, being a parent, whatever.
For
But at the
sure.
end of the day, it's like the success that I want is with the company that I keep and the people that I have in my life. And I think that if I can live my life the way I want to live and be a positive beacon in any way, shape, or form to the people around me, that would be a great way. Yeah.
So if I understand correctly, you're just saying that the impact you will have on other people. I think
Yeah.
we're saying the same thing, John. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that is what success is, right?
Yeah.
It's
I
like
agree.
how are you impacting people, right? Like how are you touching people? Like not like how's the weather, John? Like,
Yeah.
how are you touching them? Like,
Yeah.
because you
Well,
never know what people are going through.
yeah, I agree. I agree completely. I think it's yeah. Yeah. It's got me thinking. I think yeah, I like that. Yeah. I like to spend the last bit of every podcast doing sort of like a rapid Q&A. Some of these are
Yeah,
super
let's do it,
easy,
bro.
some of them are a little bit more in depth. My first question is
All right, this
what
was good.
what's your favorite book?
My favorite book. Oh, this is so hard. Fight Club by Chuck Palahniuk, but I'll also add in for like the intellectuals, Lateral Thinking by Edward Bonneau. I might be butchering the name.
Okay. I've read Fight Club, I've seen the movie, and have not read the other one. What is your favorite movie?
Oh man, this is so hard.
Give me a couple.
Oh, there's so okay. So I love Kill Bill.
Yeah. Volume one or
I
two.
love both. I
Okay.
look at it like one whole movie,
All right.
just split. I like The Matrix,
Yeah.
Morpheus.
Did you see the new one?
um, nah.
Yeah, it's all right. I didn't hate it. I
I
didn't love it. It was like it was just all right.
what's it about?
I mean, Neo is like still in the It's just it's like, he's back in the Matrix again. It's like
I'm good.
yeah,
I'm
it's
good.
listen, there is a nostalgia factor for it. Like I fucking love the first three movies. Like, they were our childhood, man.
Yeah, they're
99,
fire.
like fuck, I was 14 years old when that shit came out. And it was like huge. Like I just remember it being like so revolutionary when it came out. And I think like they just tried to do too much in the new movie, and like they were really pie in the sky in terms of their like themes and like what they were trying to say with the movie, and it just didn't land for me. I've watched it twice. I liked it better the second time than I did the first time. So it's just
I
okay.
feel you.
Solid 5.5 out of 10.
Okay, I feel you. So look, if you like The Matrix, a lot of these movies are inspired by anime. So
Mhm.
if you like The Matrix, watch Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah, I've seen Ghost in the Shell. I played the video
Okay, so
game too.
that's like,
Yeah.
oh, what? There's a video game?
Yeah, I mean it's not new. This is like
Yeah, okay.
100
Back in
years
the
old. Yeah, back in the day.
day.
What's your
All
favorite
right.
food?
Okay, that's really hard, man.
Give me a couple.
Jamaican food. Okay, so my girlfriend's Japanese and Portuguese, so like I love sushi, Japanese cuisine. I love like I look at cuisine like art. Like like I
Yeah.
cook a lot too, so it's like I cook with color and stuff. It's a different rhythm. Like I like jerk chicken.
Yeah.
I like I love like cultural foods and fusions. I love tacos,
Yeah.
Mexican food.
I'm getting tacos for
I
dinner
love
tonight. I've already
like
decided.
ooh, don't. Oh man, I'm jealous. I have to hit up the carnita spot, but I'm actually like my palate's very diverse. Like I love anything. Like we have the classic French steak plate
Hmm.
type of vibe, but like I'll eat anything. Like I'll try anything once.
Cool.
Because I feel like food represents culture.
Yeah. I know. I totally agree. Do you believe in an afterlife?
Okay, so this one's weird, man. Like I really don't know, but I know that like energy can't be destroyed
Yeah.
nor created, right? And like I don't know, man. That's a tough one. Like I don't like who knows? Who really knows? But
I
what I
know.
do know is
I'm just
that
kidding.
no, but what I do know is like there's something beyond us, like
Yeah, my thought
there has to.
process, and like I think this is like an evolved mindset, because like I grew up in a religious Catholic household, and I wouldn't say I'm very religious now. I'm very spiritual. Like I pray. I
Okay.
don't know that like Jesus Christ is sitting on a cloud somewhere listening to my prayers. But I just think of like the sheer like improbable fact that I exist and it was born, and
Yeah.
human beings exist and we're born in general, and like we're having this conversation on a fucking Wednesday afternoon on a fucking Apple device. Like it's just surely improbable the fact that we exist. So it'd be crazy for there not to be something afterwards. And listen, I don't think it's a party in the sky kind of thing, but I don't know what it will be or won't be.
Yeah, I don't know what my take is on that, but like I do know that like in my life, like I've been tapped into like information that I don't know the genesis or origin to. So
Yeah. No,
there has to be something above me. Like, I sometimes feel like there's something above me and I'm just like a receptor and just like tapping into something. So like,
yeah,
there has to be something.
I agree. What's the best piece of advice someone's ever given you?
Stay jiggy, don't get juggled.
What does that mean?
So like just be on your toes, just be aware that like, don't be at the mercy of your environment to get juggled around and then they spit back out. Because like that will leave you really scarred and jaded and
No, I like that. Last question. Give me a recommendation for something that you've recently consumed. It could be a book, a TV show, a movie, a podcast, a restaurant, fucking literally anything. Just give me something that you want to recommend for the people who are hearing you today.
Okay, only if you attempt to reach out to him. That's the only way I'll do this.
Deal.
Okay, his name is Dr. Huberman. He's a neuroscientist at Stanford University.
Okay.
Like during COVID, when I was like, my experience during COVID was a little different. Like I needed to be isolated. Like I said, I met my girlfriend. We're at my uncle's cottage for a bit. It was the best time of my life. But what helped me do the self-work was understanding what's going on in my mind. And he's a neuroscientist, Dr. Huberman. Follow his podcast. I'm not trying to plug, I don't work for him. I'm just saying that the value of his information has like revolutionized my healing. Like I wouldn't be the person I am today in front of you without that. Like it accelerated my healing because there's sometimes things that you understand about yourself, but like his approach is this is what's going on in your brain. So like he just released one, he always does it on Mondays. And this one was about grief and depression. And like I suffered with that for a long time. Like it was so hard for me to grieve because like, a lot of my friends just passed away during COVID. Like I lost like 10 friends and it was not due to COVID.
Wow.
So like I became numb to it, right? Like, and that one really hit me. But like overall, the wealth of knowledge that he brings to you and like, he's just bringing scientific tools for dealing with life. And I think that's so amazing. Like, shout out Dr. Huberman. I'm personally like, I want to talk to him because he really helped me out, like without knowing it. And it's just because he was being him. And like, so if you have a chance, like watch one of his podcasts, you might discover something.
I absolutely will. And I'll DM him after we get off the line and try to get him on my podcast.
Please do.
Just for you.
Invite me. Plug me in.
For sure. Ashten, dude, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today. I'm greatly appreciative of not just your time, but your friendship. You're a cool dude. You inspire me to create better work. You inspire me to be a good dude. And yeah, man, I'm just super thankful for your time, for your friendship, and for all that you've provided to me over these last couple of months.
Yo, I really appreciate you, man. Like I said, like just our conversations have been so like helpful in my journey. Just even opening up, like like we're homies. Like so, just reach out anytime. And like I'm really glad. I really value this friendship. I can't wait for us to meet up in person, and just kind of connect and just vibe out some more. Okay.
Fuck yeah, man. Have a great day, buddy.
All right, you too, bro.